I feel like this interview got a little too intimate for video. I feel almost in like a therapeutic type of session.
I find it really interesting. I
Are
find
you able to forgive yourself? Yeah, I'm forgiving myself.
the
We'll see you in court.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Oh, hi, Mark.
It's delicious. Oh my
hello. How are you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Yeah. How's the press tour? How's the festival lead up? How's it all going for you?
Exciting. It's good. It's good. So far, so good.
You've done some festivals already with St. Clair, right? Is this
Just Taormina, actually. We just
okay?
did the world premiere in Italy and Sicily in Taormina. Then it's UK. Then we have others that I don't think have been announced yet.
How are you with that process? Are you someone that just kind of relishes in the fun of it all, or do you get nervous? Do you worry about all the things that you're suddenly noticing in the film that you hadn't seen with an audience before?
Actually, I obviously thought about all of that. I go back and forth. I feel like most people, I go back and forth between stressing and worrying. And then eventually somebody that you don't know, that you've never met, says something so meaningful to you, and you're like, oh, I did something decent. And it resonates and it works. And I try to like maintain a balance between appreciating anybody who understands the film, resonates with it, and at the same time I always say, like, now it's out in the world and it's no longer pure, because it it will be subject to criticism, it will be subject to misunderstandings. I cut my teeth on my first Braid, and I learned a meaningful lesson because it came out as Nobody Leaves. Braid was my first film. I had no ambitions whatsoever of it going to festivals, of being it picked up for world distribution. I just did something purely because I felt like I had an important philosophical thesis to share with the world, and I had this very specific vision about adults playing make believe. So I made it when I was 26. I'm 33 now. If I watched it recently and I thought, this is fearless. At the time, though, it came well reviewed at 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a handful of people are like, this is confusing and it's artsy and it's form over matter, which is like, to me, it's a stab at the heart, because I actually poured 25 years of classical studies and Greek tragedy and divine comedy and nihilism and philosophy and opera and Japanese graphic novels, and you tell me that it's form over substance, and it's insulting and it hurts you. But when you're 20, mid 20s, and it's your first film, it was it was tough. I really struggled with some of the negative feedback, because I was like, how have I been completely, not completely, by some, unfortunately you often remember the bad reviews and not all the great ones, but it really hurt me that I felt so profoundly misunderstood, and then by some. And then years go by, and I realize that will never change the way that I relate to myself and the way that I make art. Because at the end of the day, if I did everything I could to give this thing a soul, which is how I look at films, then somebody misunderstanding it, somebody not liking it, somebody hating it, and even somebody obsessing with it and thinking it's a masterpiece, that does not matter. I have come to a place, fortunately, but thanks to that experience on Braid, where I know I don't need external validation to know where I stand as a filmmaker, as an artist, and as a human being. Long-winded answer, sorry, but that you gave me a heavy question.
Does it feel like a sense of relief when you hand a film over to a festival and then suddenly it's in the hands of an audience and you can just sit back and let it kind of be its own thing?
Definitely. My brother was in the audience, and you know how siblings are. If they can stab you with something like a little jab, they will. Jay, my brother's he's an academic, and he's very blunt, especially with me, because I'm his sister, I'm his younger sister. And he was the first person that I looked at after the film was done, and his eyes were beaming, and he was like, great. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe my brother liked it, because you're not my target audience.
Are you someone that grew up with horror genre films, or is that the kind of style that you've just discovered that you like?
Combination of both. I think that because being Italian, and being raised in Italy and going to Italian high schools that are very focused on humanities and the class and classical studies, I feel like if you think about the Divine Comedy now, you would say, oh, that's genre, 1000%. There's supernatural, there's horror, there's thriller. And I think that studying the Bible, studying Greek tragedies, is studying like, reading mythology, Greek mythology at a young age, and then going on with the Divine Comedy and all of it, and like being a huge lover of our history, opera, and philosophy and like literature. I feel like symbolism and allegory became my bread and butter, and no better place to do it than genre. I think that we're fortunate to be able to work within a medium that is so impactful and so capable of changing somebody's mind within a few hours. If we don't use the tools that cinema has given us to talk about important philosophical issues, social issues, political issues, but wrapped up in a genre, in an allegory of genre, in the symbolism of genre, so that you can still watch the film and think about the lead running away from the creature, but the creature represents generational trauma. Then you can still get the thrill, the catharsis of like what let's say Greek tragedies were born for, or to bring some kind of a relief during times of war, which equates to times of personal difficulty, or societal difficulties and generational difficulties. But then if you sit with it, then you realize that that was a metaphor for something else. That was actually talking about a deeper, existential meaning. I think that this idea of snobbery towards genre is totally undeserved. I feel like the people that actually know literature, that know art, understand that we're actually making the best use of cinema, because it helps us reach like higher objectively. And I think that is brilliant. And I think I'm not putting too much thought into it. It's just what I think I've gathered from what I've studied and what I've loved.
And can you give a little rundown? I'm sure you've had to do 20 of these already, but can you give a little synopsis or a rundown of what St. Clare is and maybe how the story came about?
Yeah, so St. Clare is, I would say, female American Psycho meets Joan of Arc. It's a story of a young woman haunted by voices from a very young age, who has a penchant for killing ill-intended people, but with the painful awareness that if she wants to eradicate evil from the world, she has to become evil itself. And so she lives with this dichotomy, this ethical and moral dichotomy, that to me, we also try to show in the film as far as aesthetic choices, because we used a lot of chiaroscuro, so like Caravaggio like style of lighting. Claire is a solitary character. Claire is a anti-hero. I feel like similarly to my characters in Braid, she is an outcast from society. And I think that everybody can relate a little bit more to an anti-hero, almost a villain or a Joker type of villain, in the sense that we're aware of the wounds that are inflicted on society, and at times when these wounds continue to be inflicted, something festers, and that something isn't necessarily evil, but it was left and not taken care of. And I do feel like that's the best way of approaching a character. In this case, approaching Claire, I feel like she very much aches for a betterment in the world and feels like society has not helped her at all. She represents, I feel like, the quote unquote forgotten, marginalized groups of society who have to take matters into their own hands, although then they have to pay the price of making such a choice.
And was this a story that you were particularly drawn to for any personal reasons?
I enjoyed the idea of a Dexter-like character. I'm also a huge fan of the manga Death Note. That idea of doing bad things for good reason was definitely fascinating. I feel like there weren't many in like female form. I definitely, having gone to Catholic school, I had plenty of like personal imagery to draw from and influences, but specifically I was awestruck by some of the words that Joan of Arc used in her final hours. The fire within me is greater than the fire around me. It's like, okay, 17-year-old girl from countryside France. And I with just my wheels started spinning when I thought about, yeah, Dexter-like, American Psycho-esque female character, but going to Catholic school. But in the book, she wasn't as influenced by the Catholic references. And I thought no
Right.
better person than Joan of Arc to help shape her psyche. Like, why is she this way? Again, she says everything I've said and done is in the hands of God, which I'm not afraid I was born to do this. And she repeats that over and over in the film. And I think that the idea of dying for a cause, I feel like, especially because I was raised Catholic and I was imbued in imagery of saints and martyrs and tragic theatrical deaths. I felt like there was something there that was worth exploring. I feel like moral clarity has definitely maybe become a value that's no longer as celebrated. And I feel like Claire specifically, everything could go wrong. She's alone. Nobody understands her. Everybody calls her crazy. But because she has moral clarity, she fears nothing. She doesn't fear solitude. She doesn't fear failure and even death ultimately.
And you mentioned the style in terms of lighting references and it having quite a distinct visual style. Is that something that you're very conscious of when you're pre-prepping a film, that you know
Absolutely.
how the imagery looks, or is that something that develops through the shoot?
No, I'm a big storyboarder. I storyboarded pretty much every main shot in St. Claire. I actually did more storyboards for St. Claire than I did for Braid, which is ironic because Braid is a lot more design heavy, but because we shot St. Claire in 15 days, I knew that I had to. Oh yeah, yeah. I knew that I was in front of a humongous challenge. I was very stressed leading up to production because it felt obviously like not enough time, but in St. Clair style, I felt I'm here. If I'm here, it's because I'm capable of pulling this off. I just like had to have faith beyond what I saw in front of me. Because if I had been completely rational, I would have been like, I'm not doing this. And it takes a little ignorance at times to do things. 15 days, I had to be military prepared for everything, and I had to just storyboard every single shot that I cared about, that I wanted it to look exactly like a Dutch angle through the closet. It has to look like this, or it's not going to be done, because we didn't have we didn't have the luxury to be like, yeah, let's try it like from this other angle. And no, it had to be do the shot list. Shot list gets turned into the producers. The producers laugh at us. They're like, you're not going to be able to do this in a day. The DP and I were like, no, we're going to get this done. And so, we were doing 60 setups a day, when usually you would do 25. We were shooting 9 to 10 pages a day. And so the night before, I would sit down with my DP, do the shot list to the full of as though time was not an issue. We would do it, and almost, I went to theater school. I went to school for dramatic arts, almost like we were memorizing a script. We would, review the shot list and I would draw it, which was helping me memorize the shot list in a very like actor-like way of like, it's in my body. Now I have it. It's mine.
Yeah.
And so when I would show up on set, I didn't look at the shot list because I had no time to look at anything. And so what we were doing was a matter of dancing with the resources that we had at the moment, because at times things wouldn't show up objectively, because when you're shooting so fast, you're like, oh, that thing should be there. Who knows where it's at? It doesn't matter. We got to shoot it another way. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so what remained, I think, was the essential. And I think that what thrived in the film was perhaps also the fact that we didn't have a lot of time. And so we had to be very specific about what shots were absolutely necessary, what shots were the most compelling, and eventually what made it was exactly what needed to make it were the shots that we felt like this is how the film has to be at all costs. And then what didn't make it just eventually wasn't essential enough.
When you're involved in the writing process and directing and having all these different hats on, do you find it harder to let things go when they don't go your way? Do you find that a tough part of the process, or are you just happy to go with what needs to be done?
I'm heartbroken.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's I can let a lot of things go in my personal life, and then that is every time that whenever things weren't up to standards as far as what I wanted or what I envisioned, it was always a stab at the heart. But I think we did all right for 15 days.
That's great. Yeah. And also everyone's their own worst critic, and whoever is watching it would have no idea of all
No,
these
it doesn't.
things
Absolutely.
that may have
I
been.
feel like this interview got a little too intimate for video. I feel almost in like a therapeutic type of session.
I find it really interesting. I find
Are you able to forgive yourself? Yeah, I'm forgiving myself.
I'll charge you. I'll send the invoice for another hour afterwards, but we can do that separately. That's all cool. Well, like you say, 15 days. It's come together fantastically. How was the casting process and getting Bella on board, and how did that change the characters in your mind, or how they ended up on screen? Was this a decision you had at the beginning?
So Bella and I wanted to work together because she had seen my first film, Braid, and she was fascinated by, I guess, my type of filmmaking. We wanted to work together. I thought highly of her. I think even highly of her now after working with her. We wanted to do a sci-fi together. That fell apart during the pandemic. So this was inevitable. Then Claire at 16 came to me, but Bella not being 16, I knew that part of the work that I had to do adapting the book into a script was to make sure that the character was in her mid-20s with the maturity and the gravitas of a woman in her mid-20s and not a young girl. When writing the character, I was in a privileged position because I had hung out with Bella as a friend several times, and so I knew that she had a quirkier side. I knew that she had a neurotic side. I knew that she had a deadpan side. I knew that she had a solitary, like very just like tough on herself side. And so I was able to, I think, create a character around what I knew Bella was like intimately, as a friend, as a person, as an artist. And I think she felt comfortable with St. Claire. I'm sure with Claire, with the character. I'm sure she'll speak more of it. But I knew from the tone of her voice on set that she was speaking from a place of truth and of that's my friend. That's I know that person, which was a huge privilege and a huge advantage to production, I think.
Well, yeah, everything has come together really fantastically, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Look forward to Fright Fest and seeing you there, and best of luck with the film and whatever comes next. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much.